Hello, hello, hello. This is Adrienne Berg, and this is the Ageless Traveler. And we have another treat for you. And this is a particular holiday treat that's really going to get you into 2026 with inspiration to get out there and to travel because we have a travel bro with us. You know our series, we love to highlight men who travel, and Simon Veness is one of them. You're going to hear his beautiful British accent, which you know I go for, but you're also going to be hearing a lot about places that you've been, like Orlando, places that you perhaps have not been, like South Africa. And he has a new book coming out that's going to deal with the history of apartheid. It's not quite a travel book, but something that you want to know about if you go into that country. We're going to talk about his aspirations to get to Antarctica. And I know you are interested in it. And we want to see how a real travel bro would take his own planning journey to go to a place like that. And of course, we always like to talk about voluntouring and volunteering. So we're going to give kids the world with Simon Veness. So thank you so much. I mean, you are a longtime journalist, very, very well known, lots of books out. And I just do want to start with who you are. How did this happen that you got so involved with travel? Travel is your life and your wife's life as well. You're really a traveling couple. So let's hear about that.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it developed in kind of two ways, if you like. First of all, as a kid, I mean, my parents took us out to Africa when we were quite young, 7 years living out in Africa. As I got into sports journalism, I managed to get some nice trips and some interesting travel experiences from the sporting world. And my very first visit to the US was in 1987. It was a crazy trip, but it definitely got me the bug to see a lot more of the US. And crucially, on that trip, never forget it, September 1987, I went to Disneyland, not knowing very much about it, and walked in through the gate and was just so totally mesmerized and blown away by what I discovered there. It was the year that Star Tours opened in Disneyland, and that was the big ride, and
Yep.
the lines for that were immense, but the ride was so immersive and so overpowering that I thought, wow, this Disney guy really knew what he was doing. I was doing my research for just purely for vacation purposes, and thought, oh, hang on, there's more to Disney than just Disneyland. There's this place called Disney World in Florida. Did 2 weeks here in Central Florida, where I now am. You can tell I was smitten because I've been living here now for 21 years. But that visit, purely for vacation, again, kindled a spark that I was thinking, well, hang on, this is a big destination for the UK, and nobody is writing about it from the UK perspective. All the literature that was available was just either international or American. The culture was just so extreme in Orlando because it's such this concentrated mix of theme parks and restaurants and hotels like you just don't see anywhere else. So, and I thought, well, the UK market is being shortchanged here. And I thought, well, why isn't anybody writing a book for the UK market? So they go, well, why don't you write it? You're a journalist, you know how to do things. And I was able to pitch an idea to a publisher for what turned out to be the Brit Guide to Orlando. And hey presto, we got 29 years of annual books out of that idea. It just struck a nerve.
So I do want everybody to know that if you take a look at the show notes or you are a subscriber to our newsletter, you're going to see the URL, Brit Guide to Orlando. There's also a book, 111 Places in Orlando that you must not miss. So we got that one going. We have a reprise, a refresh, I think, of that book coming out.
We're basically taking the content that was the Brit Guide and putting it in a new format and a new formula with a new title. So that will be out sometime in the new year.
So there are plenty of people, and I'm going to discuss my own relationship to Disney, that really are aficionados. They can tell you where every hidden Mickey is. They can tell you what's on the menu of everything. They can tell you exactly when Tinkerbell comes out and starts to fly over the castle. And it's really quite a phenomenon. If Disney was a country, it would be the 5th greatest GNP of all countries in the world. We also have Simon's wife, Susan, with Hidden Magic of Walt Disney. A lot of this is in the bones of Americans because my group Simon, my baby boomer group, were born before there was a Disney World. I saw Disney on television in black and white in 1954. And that was triggered my life in travel, believe it or not. And all the kids wanted was to go to Disneyland. And this is the 78 million baby boomers in the United States. And that's why I have to ask you, what is this incredible fascination that Brits have? That you had a book out of it for decades.
It's a mutual love affair, Adrian. It's definitely something that we've grown up with, watching TV and the movies, and you see things on the movies that are so iconic. I mean, here's an example for you. In the movie Dirty Harry, one of the principal pieces of action takes place with a school bus. Now, if you're watching that from the UK, you have no idea that the school bus is actually real and is not just made up for Hollywood. And then you come to the US and you see real school buses and you go, well, hang on, I'm in the movies. And that's the feeling that a lot of Brits have when they come to the US for the first time. It's this aspirational destination that gets under your skin, that is part of your consciousness from an early age, from watching TV and film. When you get here, you find that it's real. And, it's not just the theme parks that are made up, but the whole culture, the whole country exists in this almost movie-like state. And it's so appealing.
It's so interesting, too, because there's such a lightness in Orlando. It's physically light. The sun is shining. It's out there. It's a little bit different than, let's say, going to London or Edinburgh, where I actually like to hang out. But so I could see that you're entering almost a new universe. And then, of course, you've got all the rides, and they're doing so well, creating new universes around you. It's very transporting. My listeners have been hearing me wax poetic about Africa because I spent a month there very recently. And one of those places was South Africa, where I liked to stay at the Mandela Sanctuary, a beautiful hotel, and go through the history of apartheid. When I went to Uganda, or particularly Uganda, I saw Murchison Falls, but even in Kruger Park, I took water safaris. And in these water safaris, it looked just like the Jungle Cruise. You'd walk, there'd be the elephant on the side. You would have the hippos would come out of the water. You could see their little ears, and then the boat would just about get to them when you were afraid, and then they would go back down again. And I was thinking, somebody at Disney got this thing right. We even had, no kidding, the backside of board. Because if you go to, this is not South Africa, this one's Uganda. You're in Murchison Falls, and they take you around the back.
That's hilarious.
They got it right. Now, in all of your research and explaining this to the British public, did you see the excellence of it, or were just stars in your eyes there? Did you get behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, we've certainly been behind the scenes many times, since we started our business here. But purely as a visitor to a Disney theme park, you definitely feel that immersive nature, that the creativity. It's almost overwhelming because there's nothing like it in Europe, or there wasn't before, Disneyland Paris. There is nothing like it, no real point of comparison. And you walk into this theme park and you're surrounded by these beautifully created, sections and areas and lands, that are so authentic that they take you totally out of the everyday and they put you in this fantasy. And you can genuinely appreciate all the work that goes into it. I mean, one of the things that struck me most of all going to Disneyland for the first time was the fact that the trash bins were all themed to the area that they were in. So if it was Fantasyland, they looked different to Adventureland. And I'm thinking, who has the detail in their mind to create such extraordinary landscapes down to the fine detail? And it was the broad scope, the micro scale that they worked on. And you could tell that the thought process that had gone into creating these theme parks was absolutely first class. I mean, this was genius level creativity from a commercial point of view. And the more you see of it, the more you get caught into the thinking behind it. And the ride that we come back to time and again when we try and explain the immersive nature is, if you do the Expedition Everest ride in Animal Kingdom, you are surrounded by the sights and sound of Bhutan and Nepal and the mountains themselves. Joe Rohde, who created Animal Kingdom, and particularly that ride, really knew his stuff about the history and culture of the Himalayas and the countries and the people. And he created a ride that is absolutely like walking into Bhutan and Nepal in their cultures, the sounds, the sights. He got it all perfectly. And that's the Disney difference.
My son-in-law is an Imagineer. If you've been to London, you might have gone to Selfridges, and Selfridges is a big department store, for those who don't know, and there was a Netflix series on it. And my son-in-law just came back from doing the Christmas decorations for Disney in the windows of Selfridges.
Wow.
And you would think, a window decoration, big deal. It took a month. The detail of his making Tinkerbell is interactive. When you stand in front of the Selfridges window, you can interact with Tinkerbell, with every single different tableau, I'll call it, from Disney. You can ask Tinkerbell to move to another part of the window. If you move to that part of the window, she will follow you. That's just one tiny little thing. I promised myself that I would not devote this whole show to Disney, which you could. Let us go back to South Africa for a minute and talk about what's coming up. Even though it may not be travel related, I think it's going to be an important book. So talk a little bit about your South Africa connection and what is coming up in the future in your new book.
This project has been ongoing for more than 10 years and is finally coming to fruition thanks to a publisher from North Carolina called McFarland. As a kid, we were in Botswana for 4 years, from 1972 to 1976. And I went to a brand new school that had just opened in the capital Gaborone called Maruapula. I didn't know anything about it at the time, didn't understand its significance. But the headmaster was a British guy by the name of Dean Yates. He was involved in the peace process in 1994 in the lead up to South Africa's first free elections. He walked into Alexandra when it was a war zone at times with the warring political factions. And then he went on to found the Alexandra Education Committee. So his story is a really gripping and compelling one, and just helps to underline how many people from all walks of life helped to undermine the racist regime that was in charge of South Africa for so long.
In Orlando, you have a related charity that caught your attention. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yes. I mean, with great delight, Adrienne, because it's become a big part of our lives this year. It's a place called Give Kids the World, which was established in 1986 in Kissimmee by a Holocaust survivor by the name of Henry Landworth, who realized that there was nowhere in Orlando that catered for children with life-threatening illnesses. He got a bee in his bonnet, worked with a lot of really good people to create this village as it now is. And it does an absolutely amazing job every day of bringing in Wish Foundation families whose wish for their child is to go to the theme parks or meet Mickey Mouse or be a princess for the day, anything like that. They bring them in free of charge. They put them up for a week. They arrange all their food, their park tickets, everything like that. But it basically runs on volunteer help. There are 1,800 volunteer shifts a week needed for the village, and by and large, they fill them. So we got involved this year, something we've known about all the time we've been writing the Brit Guide, basically, and something we've been happy to promote since then. But this year, we've finally decided, as we're sort of sliding into retirement, as it were, we're going to use some of our spare time for a good cause and finally get to know the village properly. And we really have done that this year, and we are absolutely smitten. We love working there. It's a joy to be there, truly one of the most remarkable places you'll ever come across. But, they always need volunteers. And it is definitely something now that if you are having an Orlando vacation, you could certainly think about devoting a day or two of your vacation to helping out at Give Kids the World. It truly is a remarkable place. You feel different there. You act as if you're a privileged person to be able to be helping these families, to steer them through their holiday, to work in the ice cream shop, in the cafe, to deliver pizza, whatever it is. There is a true joy to being there. And I would definitely want to underline this as something that people would like to experience the next time they're in Orlando.
I will be in Orlando, and I'll be in Orlando for something kind of interesting because I'm a speaker on cruise ships. And Cunard has a little event there. And I would love to do this. November 19th was Child Grief Day. Now, for 5 years, I had the privilege of being a volunteer at Good Grief, which is in New York and New Jersey, and now in schools for children like myself who lost parents very early in life, to be a facilitator, a grief facilitator for kids. And you would say, oh, how could she possibly every week go face that? But it's exactly what you say, Simon. It is the most uplifting, the most giving.
Yep.
I wouldn't have thought it, but it's true. And I was addicted to that high that you get when you help other people.
Exactly.
And my little 7-year-old granddaughter was sad the other day, and she said she was sad. And I could have said a million things. I said, you're sad? Go do something for somebody else. Because the minute you do that, you're not sad anymore. It's a wonderful thing. So we're going to have the show notes with Give Kids the World. But I want to be sure, because I know a lot about volunteering. Do they really want day trippers? Somebody who, because so many of people listening will be in Orlando, like myself, for one reason or another, and they may go for a day or two. Can they actually volunteer just for a day or two?
Absolutely, they can. Yeah, I mean, it is entirely up to the volunteer how much they want to do. Whether it's purely a one-off thing, it could just be 3 hours one afternoon working in the ice cream shop or working one of the attractions. So yeah, there's certainly no reason why anyone couldn't do a one-off a trip to Give Kids the World.
Now we're going to take a little bit of a break, but I do want to end this segment with something that is being discussed constantly in the world of travel, and that is Antarctica. And I want to put it in a very particular way because when I read your bio, you put in a place you had not been. And most of the time I get a bio, here's where I want, and let's talk about this. You said, I have an aspiration. I want to go to Antarctica. Now, it's the same aspiration I have until I look at the costs, and then I fall off my chair.
Yes, that's right.
I know. So, but one of the reasons that people my age who have traveled don't travel anymore is they'll tell me, Adrienne, I got no place to go. I've been there. And I call it travel burnout. What do they come up with? Antarctica. So it's the same thing that you've come up with. I want to go. And then they don't know how to plan or go about going to a place that exotic and remote. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how does a travel bro, a travel writer, a journalist, a veteran of travel, prepare for a trip or think about a trip that is that difficult and unusual. Don't you guys go anywhere. If you've been thinking about a cruise, I've definitely got you covered with Cruises It. Now, we have just become affiliated with them. And who are they? Well, Cruises It is the top agency for all the main cruise lines and some of the less known cruise lines as well. Cruises It has access to booking space that's been open years in advance, so you can get the best cabins, and that's just number one. But they also make the prices lower. The cruise lines give Cruises It their own exclusive agency discounts. And if you're not from the cruise line, they have their own agency discounts that would apply as well. So you get both any discounts you would normally get on the cruise line, plus additional discounts that are given exclusively to Cruises It because they bring in so much business. On top of all those discount perks, when you book with them, you get the best rate guaranteed. And this is because Cruise Fair Watch system takes place. Now, what Cruises It does is it tracks the pricing until the final payment date. So you keep in mind that to get the best rate guaranteed, you have to use my site. We have affiliated with them specifically. I sat down, I met with them in Tucson, Arizona. I met with Marianne Weather. We've now become good friends. She gave me a direct line not only a link, which you can certainly use right away, but if you have questions, even a specific phone number. Cruises, it offers this not just to anyone that is one of our followers, but if you have friends and family, you can bring them in too. So just take a look at the show notes and you will see our dedicated phone line and our dedicated link. Happy sailing. And now we're back. Now, Simon Veness is with us. In addition to being a journalist, he's a traveler himself, and he's been featured on BBC TV's holiday program. You could go on and on. But the fact is that there's a place he hasn't been, just like all of us. That's Antarctica. How come you fixated on it, and how are you going to get there?
Yeah, the fixation is easy to explain. The getting there is obviously the difficult part. I mean, the fixation is purely with, if you like, the one of the world's, if not what the world's last great wilderness. It has an absolutely magnetic attraction to it, to an environment that is so extreme, that is so outlandish, that it really has to be seen to be believed. That's what I've been reading about it, and as editor of World of Cruising magazine, in my past, I spoke to several journalists that have been out to Antarctica and explained what the attraction was, and it truly is just that otherworldly experience that you are not going to get anywhere else in the world, even in place, like going to the Arctic by comparison. It hasn't got that same large-scale, outlandish feel about it. That's the attraction for me. Actually getting there is the difficult bit, because it's a very niche travel market. There are only a few ways to get there, and while there are more ships that now visit Antarctica than ever before, they're still only relatively small, and the numbers, for obvious reasons, need to be kept small, because you can't make it a mass market destination, or you destroy the very idea of what it is. So that's the challenge, is to find somewhere of one of these boutique cruise lines that really gets to Antarctica and gives you the essential experience while actually being able to afford it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a moment. And let's talk about that also in the context of the world of cruising, because Antarctica is a destination from a cruise that can take you from South America. You might leave from Argentina or Chile, go down into the Falklands, which I've done, and then it continues down into Antarctica. But these are big ships. Then you've got the smaller ships, as you're talking about, or you can fly from actually South Africa in January. So there are many ways to do it. What's your feeling?
Most of the cruises that are in the mainstream leave from Tierra del Fuego right down to the very bottom of Argentina, the very tip of South America. So first of all, you've got to get there, and that's not a cheap flight by any means. So it's the very nature of where it is and what it is, it's going to rule out that the finances are going to rule out a lot of people. So it's something certainly that you would have to be aware of in advance and get an idea of the prices. And look, I mean, from my point of view, I'm looking at some of the specialist expedition cruise lines like Aurora Expeditions.
Yeah, the expedition cruise.
Yeah, that's another very good name in this particular area. I mean, I've certainly, I've got to know from a professional point of view a lot of the niche tour operators to that part of the world, and the bottom line is it's never going to be a cheap experience. It's just not possible to make it a mass market option. So it's something you're going to have to budget for. You're going to have to do a lot of homework about it to work out which cruise line and which kind of ship is best for you. Do you want the bigger ship that's going to be slightly more stable for crossing the Drake Passage, which is, if you like, is the big boogeyman of the Antarctic cruise experience? You've got to cross this really extreme stretch of sea to get to Antarctica in the first place. And that can be a brutal crossing at times. So the bigger the ship you can go on, the better in those respects. But then when you get to Antarctica, you really need the small ship so that you can get into some of the places that you really want to see that are difficult to get to. And you're only going to get there with a small ship and they're Zodiac boats that take you ashore. So this is a kind of thing that takes a lot of preparation, a lot of homework, and a lot of talking to people. And I'm particularly lucky that my best friend from my college days and his wife did the Antarctica experience with Aurora this past austral summer. And they were able to report back and give me the full lowdown on what they did, what were the best, the best parts of it. So I've collated a lot of what they've told us and trying to put that together in a 5-year plan, if you like, to make it out there in that time frame.
So when you go, with any luck, we'll still be around. Maybe 4 or 5 years, you'll get there. We'll have a show about it. I do want to plug one of my friends, and that is Journeywoman. We were so privileged to get an award. We didn't know them then for solo travel. And they have wonderful trips to Antarctica for women only, alone, for women who are solo. And they put the group together, and it's really quite wonderful. We will be reporting on Antarctica. There's no question about that. Now, the world of cruising for a moment. I have taught people how to cruise because I was somebody who was deathly seasick, and I couldn't cruise for 20 years. And I learned how to do it through acupuncture. So my great contribution, I think, my greatest contribution to the world of travel is that I teach people how not to be seasick. Yes, yeah, as we get older, we cruise more. It's easy. But here's what makes me crazy, Simon, and I got to throw this out to you because you worked with World of Cruising. I can't stand it when people don't get off the ship. I am like a menace. I walk around and then, where are you going? And I'm a great cruiser now. I've even been through the Drake Passage down to Tierra del Fuego, which is supposed to be tough, right? You just said it was tough. I had no problem.
Absolutely, yeah. 9 times out of 10, it's brutal.
Brutal. No problem. And I was in Glacier Alley taking pictures. My daughter wrote back, "You've never looked so good." I'm telling you, I know how to not be seasick. But I love to get off the ship. So if I say to people, "Where are you going tomorrow?" And they say, "I'm staying on." "What are you doing?" "I've been to Greenland. And people, Brits, by the way, said to me, "Oh, we're not getting off. It's rocky." What? I go nuts. What's going on here?
Why would you go all that way to travel and to that expense and not actually see what you're there to see? I don't get it at all.
I don't get it, but it's happened to me. So I get to be like a cruise bully. But you actually had to be nice in World of Cruising. Did you ever deal with that in any of your journalism or your articles to encourage people to actually take advantage of the shore excursions?
Well, it was a kind of double-edged sword because we try not to prejudge what people's motives are for travel in the first place. So we do always point out that if you're going to take a ship excursion, be aware that you're probably going to be paying top dollar for that excursion. And especially in today's internet age, if you do a little bit of homework, you can probably find a similar tour offered by a local operator for less. So do your homework, but definitely get out and try and experience the places that you're traveling in. It's actually, this is a really good debate because it strikes me that it's the feature, the magazine feature that needs to be written about, why you would or wouldn't want to get off the ship. And I must admit, in 15 years of editing the magazine, that it wasn't ever a topic that came up. And yet it does seem really obvious when you step away from it. So I think you're onto something there.
I've never written about the psychology of not getting off the ship because I'm so strident about it that I'm afraid everybody's going to get mad at me. Because really, what's it my business, right? If they don't get off the ship, it's not my business. But I don't want them to stay on the ship. Yeah. So that's part of it. But cruising has changed. I'll finish here before I take a break and we start to actually talk about sports travel. What do you think of the new ships where people actually live on them? I visited one in Panama. I love ships. We've gone through very long cruises. But I don't know if it's a substitute for retirement living. Now you're getting into retirement yourself. I've tried to retire 4 times. So I know a little bit about retirement. Never worked. But I can't see 100% living on a ship, although I get it. So do you think that's going anywhere?
No, I can't see it ever being a major part of the cruise industry. That they seem to have found a slight niche for themselves in creating 2 or 3 of these world traveler type live on board ships. They don't appeal to me. It's going to be something you'd have to that could easily be very claustrophobic after a while. I couldn't do it because one of the pleasures in life for me is finding places with a nice, a really nice, interesting coffee shop and going there for the morning and just hanging out. So, being on board a ship for, permanently doesn't appeal. I do love cruising. It's something I've done from a very young age. Been very, very fortunate in as much as I took my first cruise when I was 9 back
Oh,
in 1969. And just I was absolutely bowled over by this style of travel, and had a bug for it ever since. And I've done about 100 or some cruises in the past. Seen a lot of different cruise ships. Seen the absolute transformation of the cruise industry through the 1980s and 90s to what it is today, and it's unrecognizable from what it was back in the 1970s. So it's a fascinating business. To me, it has eternal appeal, but only for visiting particular places. If you wanted to see a lot of the Mediterranean, the only real way to do that is with a cruise.
yes, I agree. We recently did a 16-day cruise to the Mediterranean, and recently did one where we went to, as a British person, you'll appreciate all the Canary Islands. So if you want to meet British people, that's where you go. You go to the Canary Islands. I love Lanzarote. I mean, it was wonderful. Now we come back, we're going to talk about something that is a first for this show, and that is sports and travel. So don't you guys go anywhere. We'll be right back. Did you know that 3,000 people receive the Ageless Traveler newsletter every single Tuesday, and it's free of charge? Well, you simply subscribe on our website, agelesstraveler.com, when you see the pop-up, or take a look at the resource section that's in the show notes accompanying this episode. You'll also see how directly you can subscribe to our newsletter. Now, what will you find in there? Well, every single week, you will get news you can use about travel, cultural experiences you can enjoy, suggestions for luxury travel for less, and yes, I answer your questions. And you can even send me those questions by text or voicemail, and you'll see just how to do it when you receive your Travel Tuesday newsletter. Plenty of discounts, plenty of inspiration, so that you never stop traveling. That's agelesstraveler.com. Take a look at the pop-up, subscribe, or take a look at our resource list accompanying this and every episode, so that you get a direct link to Travel Tuesday. We are back with Simon Veness. He is a lifelong traveler. He's lived in many countries, but north 111 places in Orlando that you must not miss. You'll know about his new book coming out on apartheid in South Africa. He's a volunteer himself, advocate for Give Kids the World, and of course the Brit Guides to Disney. It's going on for a long time, and much, much more. You heard editing at World Cruising. But wrapped into all of this is sports travel. One of the things that brings money to countries are cups like the World Cup. And so we're going to have the African Cup, which is Tanzania and Kenya and Uganda. They're really hoping that they're going to attract a lot of sports fans, because it's soccer in this case. This was amazing. I was in Brazil, Simon, and I was in Buenos Aires during World Cup. Now, in Brazil, they lost. I was there when they lost. I was outside the street with 1 million people. They lost. In Argentina, they won. And they actually, this was a huge crowd. I mean, it was scary. They had 2 million people in the middle of Buenos Aires, the big screens looking at this. The people around us knew we were from the U.S. And they took a flag, the Argentinian flag, and they wrapped us in it, my husband, when they won that cup.
Yes.
People were crying. People were fainting. People were hugging and kissing. I mean, it was an unbelievable experience. And I'm not that big a sports spectator.
Yeah. Soccer isn't a sport in South America. It's a religion.
Religion. So there you go. So you are in the world of sports travel. I have personally never traveled to see a sporting event, although my husband has done it for baseball. But what's your you're part of that world and your history with regard to sports?
Well, I mean, I got into sports journalism almost straight from college. It was the thing that I wanted to do most of all, after I'd spent, 3 years at university. So I got, very, very fortunate that I got a good newspaper to work with in Kent to start with, and it ended up on what was then still Fleet Street back in the day, and worked on, what was considered to be the best sports desk in the business at that stage, which was the Sun newspaper. From that, I developed specific interests in tennis and cricket, and also American sport, which proved to be quite prophetic in its way. And I've been to the home of cricket in the UK, which is Lord's Cricket Club. I've been to European Championship boxing. I've been to 15 Super Bowls to cover for newspapers. And there is definitely a very special place in travel for sports that has grown almost exponentially in the last 20 years or so. And we're going to see it firsthand next year when the World Cup comes to the US and Mexico and Canada, and we'll have the final here in the US. And we're going to see fans from literally all over the world coming to the US for this event. And it is going to be beyond anything we've seen in terms of, it's going to be a Super Bowl every single day for a month. So the perspective on it is going to be enormous. And I think we're going to get a real feel with all these people coming from all these countries to celebrate the sport, first of all, to enjoy it, to revel in it, to really get under the skin of it. It is going to be a really eye-opening experience.
I struggle with the fact that many women love to travel and their husbands don't. Here in the sports travel, I think we have an opportunity for flipping the script. We have an opportunity for men to really get out there and travel and see something that they love, that they've only seen maybe from their easy chair. And I see it all the time here because I live in Palm Springs. So there's a couple of kind of sports travel here that is rarely discussed enough. One of them is tennis. We have the tennis opens, and people to come. It fills every single seat, and many of them are women. So because tennis is also a women's sport. Second that we have here is golf. And people come for all the golf opens. And again, it's a woman's sport as well as a man's sport. So here's a rare opportunity for the husband and the wife to both get interested and go and travel. But one thing I'm going to tell you we have, you'll fall off your chair, Simon. In Rancho Mirage, we have croquet.
Of course. Why?
There's no way to figure out the sport, but it's very, very difficult. But the croquet is probably the most bizarre of all of the sports travel. And yet you have tremendous fans and a great, great club. So I'm going to finish with this, and this is a very serious question for a lot of people. How to get tickets to these amazing events? And again, particularly what you were talking about, soccer, which is very, very popular. I've been to the Olympics a couple of times, including in England, when they had Olympics over there. Any hints and tips, hacks for getting sports tickets of any type?
Well, the essential message I would have said is to first of all study the official website for the sporting organization in question, and especially when it comes to soccer, and even more so when it comes to the World Cup. FIFA.com, FIFA.com is going to be your repository for everything to do with how to enjoy the World Cup, either as a fan outside the stadiums or getting tickets to be inside the stadiums. It is going to be a massively coordinated event in terms of ticket sales, and FIFA will have chapter and verse on the best way to buy tickets. It is not going to be cheap. It's going to be like going to not necessarily the Super Bowl, which has become outrageously expensive in my opinion, but it's going to be several $100s for a ticket to most games. But there are going to be opportunities to see, because this is the biggest World Cup that's ever been staged before. It will be 48 teams for the first time. And even though it's split into 3 countries, the majority are going to be here in the US. And we're going to get the chance to see a lot of countries play that we've never seen before. So in a way, FIFA are going to have to pitch their ticket prices very particularly according to who the teams are to make sure that they fill the stadiums each time. So there are certainly going to be some games that are going to be less expensive than others. So that's definitely something to watch out for.
This is not a hint or a tip. It's an observation. The way I have, and again, because I am not a sports writer, I'm rarely invited to a sports event to cover it. So the way I have been able to do and get a seat in some of these very expensive venues is because I hang out with corporate folks. They have seasons tickets. So the best thing is to get near somebody who is a corporate person, and they may invite you to one of these. And it isn't so difficult for a lot of the people listening, because a lot of the people listening are retirees whose kids are the corporate movers of this world. So call your son and your daughter and say, you know what? Do you think your corporation has an extra seat for the World Cup? You might be surprised as to what happens. But not everybody can do that. And I'm here to democratize travel. So I would like sports travel to be more accessible to everybody. And it really should be. But my second is go to the Special Olympics. The Special Olympics are just as wonderful, if not more so.
Yes, you've got that right on the nail.
And that you could afford. So Simon, you're a person of many parts. And if you could give some advice to somebody who is doing what you're doing, and you said sliding into retirement, about making travel a big part of their life in the future, because you plan to do that just by telling us about Antarctica. We know that that's your plan. So how do you see your travel future in retirement?
That's a really good question, and it's something I'm going to have to a certain extent extend to my wife, who has obviously a very big say in these kinds of things as well. I've used me and I a lot in talking to you today, but I have to say that my wife Susan has been probably the biggest influence on me in travel terms in the last 20 years that we've been together, and she has a big say in what we want to do, and it's very much a democratic decision in terms of how we see the future. She's not a big fan at all of the idea of going to Antarctica, so that's somewhere I might end up going either on my own or with another friend. We are literally planning our retirement with the idea that we will put aside a certain amount of money each year for a if you like, a headline travel to somewhere like maybe Australia or Japan, back to Africa, which we absolutely adore. There are still parts of Europe we'd like to see, and some places that we'd like to see more of. So we are definitely starting to budget with the idea of having a set amount of money each year from our pension plan that is purely devoted to travel. And I think that we actually met somebody on a vacation on a European river cruise once, who explained that this was going to be her last big trip abroad, that she'd basically planned her life, really, if you like, around doing the big trips while she was younger, and then focusing on just purely domestic travel for when she got older. The good thing is that the US is such a huge country, and it has such a vast array of different travel experiences all in the one country, that's a really very sort of thoughtful and worthwhile way to think about your travel. Try and get the big trips in as soon as possible, but don't overlook the great array of domestic travel opportunity that there is in the US.
Simon, we have a mission here. We're advocates for lifelong travel. And our motto is never stop traveling, which you're going to hear as I close the show. This happened because I was in Australia on a wonderful tour. And it was very clear to me that one of the people on that tour had early onset Alzheimer's, because I was an elder law attorney and I could spot it. And I asked her if she had any advice. And this is what she said, her exact words: take the hard trips first. That's exactly what you're saying, and it resonated with me. And that's what I've done, and I've saved the U.S. So this is an interesting show because very infrequently do we have local trips. I'm leaving today for Moab, Utah, and then I'm going up to Snowbird, Utah. So I'll be traveling the U.S. West for about 2 weeks and coming back with that. But it's rare. And people wonder, how come, you're a travel show? Because I'm taking the hard trips first. We just covered the gorillas.
Yep.
Training the gorillas in Uganda. We're taking the hard trips first. And then it'll be Tokyo, and if all goes well in the summer. So it's really, really true. But planning is very, very important. And that's why I'll give myself another plug. It's a free book called Luxury Travel for Less, so that you can beat the issue of being able to afford travel throughout your retirement on a fixed income. So it's very important to me that we look at the barriers to travel as we age. One of them is money, and we overcome them. And that's why you're always hearing me, Simon, talk about it. I want to make things affordable. So we thank you so much. I mean, we've scratched the surface. We're going to have you back again. It's been such a wonderful episode of Travel Bros. Take care.
You too, Adrienne. Thank you.
And everybody else knows, please go to agelesstraveler.com. We have a free newsletter every week, Travel Tuesday. Listen to us on Apple and Spotify. Give us a good rating. It's very important to us that you do that. Take a look at all of our free ebooks, which are at agelesstraveler.com. But most of all, never stop traveling.